Meeting to order. Where's my? Hey, there we go. All right, call this meeting to order, 4:31. Roll call, starting out with Bob.
Bacon present.
Kikwan present.
Milky present.
Coin present.
Sweet present.
Hearing a quorum present, let's move on to item 3, approval of tonight's agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Milky, support by Coin to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. And the agenda is approved. So agenda item number 4, approval of meeting minutes from January 17th.
Move to approve the minutes from January 17th, 2023.
Support.
Got a motion by Sweet, support by Coin to approve the January 17th meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. The minutes are approved.
Apologize for getting here late, Tom.
We just started about 30 seconds ago. So.
I announced present when I went by Amy, so.
All right. Item 5, correspondence. What do you have there?
Don't have anything at this point.
Item 6, public comment. Seeing nobody in the galley. Do we have anybody online? Okay. No one online, then we shall continue. Let's go on to agenda item number 7, reports. 7A, accounts payable. Jerry,
Good afternoon, everyone.
good afternoon.
Let's start with the check register for the East DDA, the 248 fund. We have a payment to Consumers Energy for $793.74. That's for the electricity to the streetlights on Pickard. And then we have a payment to Black Electric for $132.75 to replace a fuse for the Christmas lights out on Pickard. And we have a payment to Doug Small Engine for sidewalk snow plowing in January and once early February for $1,750. And we have a payment to Isabella Corp. For $11,925. This is a progress payment for the demolition project at 2120 Yachts Drive. And then we have a payment to MMI for the bench maintenance and the grounds maintenance, removing the trash and whatnot, along Pickard for January for $307.50. And then there's a payment, excuse me, to Middle Michigan Development Corp. For the annual client fee for 2023 for $2,500. And we have a payment to the City of Mount Pleasant for the annual contribution to the airport crew car for $500. So we have accounts payable for the month of January for $17,908.99. Are there any questions?
Move to approve the payables for the East DDA.
Support.
Got a motion by Milky, support by Bacon. All in favor of approving the East DDA check register, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the West DDA accounts payable. We have a check to Doug Small Engine from the West DDA for $1,500. This is also for sidewalk plowing for January and one day in February. And then we have a payment to Middle Michigan Development Corp. For the annual client fee, $2,500. And then we have a payment to the City of Mount Pleasant, which is an annual contribution to the airport crew car for $500. So we have accounts payable total for the West DDA for January for $4,500.
Questions? Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the West EDA amount.
Second?
Motion by Coin, supported by Sweet, to approve the West DDA payables. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same. Motion is approved.
Okay, and related to the payables, I just wanted to point out, it's something for the board to think about. I think you'll notice that with this, with the payables, we write checks for the East DDA out of one account, and we write checks for the West DDA out of another account. And you'll notice on here that we're sending two checks to Doug Small Engine, one from the east, one from the west. We're sending two checks to MMDC, one from the east, one from the west. And we're sending two checks to the City of Mount Pleasant, one from the east DDA and one from the west DDA. And with newer technologies, with computers and everything, we could combine these items. We can still keep track of East DDA and West DDA separately. You'll still get the same financial reports, but we could literally just write one check out of one bank account for these types of items where, you know, the East and the West are splitting the payments. It's just something to consider. It would streamline processes. You would only, in most cases, in all cases actually, you would just be approving one big long list of checks instead of two, if the accounts were combined to one. If there's any interest in it, we can bring it to the board at a later date for approval to combine the accounts. It's just something to consider.
This is something that would streamline the administrative activities pretty significantly if we can make that adjustment. We need to just make a motion
Yeah,
to do it.
there's no auditing pitfalls later down the road or anything with the state or anything like that, so. yeah.
I mean, with
So,
automation today, I know when this has come up in the past, I don't like it. I like because it's a separate taxing jurisdiction, another separate taxing jurisdiction. Used to be the West had its own board, its own chairman, or its own checking account, just like the West. I like to keep the autonomy, just because it's separate. From a public viewpoint, it's much simpler. You get too many things automated, it just
it's still all
gets
separated.
too.
It's all separated right here. Just doing the checks.
Yep.
Make it
But I mean, that's, again, that's, you guys can do what you want to do, but I just know,
Killing trees.
I like the
Right.
autonomy of keeping the two separate, because it's kind of combining a East and West DDA into one board is kind of unusual in itself. So, you know what I mean? So this will be taking another step in kind of a, I think it's kind of an anomaly when we combine the East and West to one board, because I don't know how many other, tell me another one, township that does it.
There are very few communities that have more than one DDA district. The other one I'm familiar with is the city of Ypsilanti. They actually had two boards at one point, and they did combine them a number of years for similar reasons to why we did, so. And the law allows it, yeah, the previous law allowed it, the current law that we operate under allows for that combination.
I mean, it seems easy now because we don't have any debt. We paid off the bonds, but if we go to issue another bond, I can see it being a little clumsy where everything's on one account, and maybe I'm just old school, but that's just my opinion.
I can see that perspective, and I see the autonomy as being a issue that raises some forward-thinking potential questions. And not to say that that wouldn't be more efficient, and I don't know how many we're talking about. I wouldn't think it's dozens, maybe, small number of checks that would be handled that way. I can see the efficiency of it, but I like the idea of the autonomy of two separate, and if it should be cumbersome to the point where it's really task bearing to do the separation, maybe that would be a more encouraging time for me to think about it. Right now, I think the number of times, and I see the duplication of having two checks to the same organization, just from two different things, but it's coming from one sort of. We both made we made the decision for both to do it, like the car, support of the car. To write two checks is a little cumbersome, but I like the autonomy idea.
And,
that
yeah, and
Tom
I'll be
did.
honest with you guys, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, there was a time when we had our own staff. We had our own checking account. We were our own signers. We had, and then but now we're kind of letting the township take us over, so to speak. I still like to keep some autonomy with the East DDA, the West DDA, and the township, because we're all separate, statutory established entities. And I know for accounting, oh yeah, it's probably easier, but you gotta also keep in mind, we don't have a lot going on. When we go out, let's say we're gonna go out for bond counsel, we're gonna launch a whole nother huge endeavor. I'm just seeing it getting too cozy, combining everything. Like, let's say we just have a big bond issue on the West DDA, nothing on the East DDA. I can see our future boards coming into this going, wait a minute, okay, we have the East, West there, that's the tax capture over here, the bonds for this, but it's all under the same account. I am just not, maybe I'm just old fashioned, but that's what I take. But
Have you thought about that perspective in approaching combining at least check writing?
Well, when you have a bond, in the past, there was a totally separate bank account for that anyway. So that was separate than your regular accounts payable account. And all I'm talking about with this is the bank account that the checks are written out of. You can still have your larger amounts of money in their own separate accounts. Those would still be like that. I'm just talking about the account that you're writing your regular accounts payable from.
sure, I could definitely see the efficiencies, but like I said, we used to actually sign the checks. We were listed on the bank resolution with the signature cards on them. And since then, we don't even have that anymore. And so sometimes it just, with the board, it's this easy to get out of touch with our business, if that makes any sense.
It does to me.
And you have to transfer money from, if you had a bond account or to the checking account, to then pay it out then? So there's two checking accounts now and two bank accounts?
Yes.
So now you'd
Yeah,
have
there's-
to, then, yeah, I see.
2 checkings, 2 money market accounts,
And that they're two separate institutions.
yes.
Yeah,
Oh.
I like, I'm with Tom.
You kind of see it.
I'd like to see it separate, just like we have it. It has a little more control, and we see, even though it's kind of a pain for the administration, maybe we should just keep it the way it is, and then
And you would still, I mean, I'm just talking about the checking account. Your financials that we're about to go over would not change. You would still see revenues and expenditures in the 248 fund. You'd still look at your balance sheet separately. You'd still look at revenues and expenditures in the 250 fund. It would all still be separate. I mean, the computer system can literally do that. You're still separate. You're accounting for everything separately. You're just writing checks from one account.
Oh, I see it. I mean,
I still latch onto that word autonomy. It means something to me for the two being a separate autonomous operation. And that tends to fall back to maybe the bank account as being the defining issue of this discussion at least. And I think for autonomy's purpose, that would make it a more definable. And that really makes some sense to me, not just because of the historical perspective, but also for what it might mean for the future. And so I don't see a real negative other than the duplication of the same behavior. And that's the issue I think that Sherry's bringing up. And I think I would be in favor of valuing that, but at the same time probably putting a little more value on the autonomy at this point to keep them as long as they are this way. I would support that idea.
Would it, sorry.
I say, well, I don't think she's asked for a decision. Well, let's keep the option on the table. We'll run it by when other board members get here, 'cause we're kind of slim tonight anyway.
Right, right.
So then,
Can I ask one more question?
yep.
Would it, if the issue is writing checks, because that's could be a physical process, would it be more efficient to write one check, say for the crew cab car from the west, and then have the east reimburse the west in that case, $500? Because at least that's a electronic transfer, can be done in-house, there's no physical, that doesn't really help you.
No, because they're at two different banks.
Okay.
If-
But-
If all the accounts were moved to one institution, it certainly would be easier, but
Yeah. I just brought it up as something to think about. It's not, I just wanted to put it out there for something to think about.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep.
We'll run it by when the other board get a bigger board. I think it's worth talking about again.
Okay,
would you like us to include it as a discussion item on the next agenda?
like an agenda item.
Might wanna wait till spring.
Spring, maybe the summer.
Sure, spring.
I mean, yeah.
So it might not be back.
All right, well, let's move on then, if nobody has any other questions, and let's move on to the revenue and expenditure report for the East DDA, the 248 fund. So since this is January, it's the beginning of the fiscal year, you won't see a lot going on here. There's all the postings in the expenditure area for the that include the accounts payable you just approved. In the revenue area, you'll see some interest posted. Just take note that, interest rates have increased, and I did a little bit of work with the bank, trying to increase the rates we were receiving. So we'll receive more in interest this year, and we'll probably have to do a budget amendment in the future for the interest earned line, increasing that line. So that's good news. And then moving on to the balance sheet, again, you won't see much change here just because it's the beginning of the year. Your ending fund balance is looking about 1.8 million in the east, and your total assets is about the same. Are there any questions on anything in the East DDA? I know there's not a lot here on the financials, being that it's the beginning of the year. Okay, if not, I'll move on to the West DDA. We've got the same thing in the West DDA, interest rates are higher. That's the only revenue that's posted right now is interest earned. We're in the process of winter taxes, collecting winter taxes. We settle with the county on that in March, so you won't see your property, your tax captures until later this spring. And then in the expenditure area, we've got about $4,000 posted in expenditures. Again, that's from the accounts payable you just approved today. Those are posted here. And then on the balance sheet for the West DDA, you'll see that total assets are about $830,000. And then your ending fund balance right now is set to be about $827,000. So that about sums it up. Are there any questions on anything related to the financials? I'd be happy to answer.
Questions, comments, anybody? Hearing nothing, let's let the record show the financial statements were received, presented, and filed.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. And moving on to item 7C, your board member matrix is there for your review. And moving on to item 8, new business. Item 8A, Middle Michigan Development Corporation Annual Presentation.
Right, well, I am not Jim McBride. But unfortunately, just a couple of hours ago, his office called me to let me know he had a family emergency that took him out of the area this afternoon. So he did send his regrets. He appreciated the opportunity to reschedule and come meet with you again, hopefully next month. But he's unavailable today. I'll just share a couple words. First of all, you have a copy of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation's annual report for last year. It's an interesting read. They continue to expand their activities both locally and regionally. It's certainly worth taking a look at what they have been up to and what their plans are. We do have a good presence and influence in this organization because our township manager is on their executive board. I do work with Jim and his staff regularly on various economic development activities, meeting working with them, business retention meeting on Friday morning, as an example. Just met with Jim earlier this week to talk about a couple of other projects. So this is an organization that has had a significant benefit for our community and for the region overall. So I'll leave that at that point, but I certainly encourage you to take a look at the report. And
Rodney, is there anything you can point to or identify that would be especially beneficial to our DDAs that happened within this recent year?
Well, one of the interesting items is Bandit Industries purchasing the Birch Tank property. That is something that the purchase took place late last year. It is in the process of taking that property over to expand their production activities there. The Birch Tank and Truck is going to be moving from there very shortly. Bandit is excited about this property. They're excited about expanding their business into the township. And Jim McBride has been a big part of their success and our meeting on Friday is to talk about that topic.
Did you find a reason that they like this transfer or this opportunity for them?
I think largely it's that it's the right property at the right time. That site has some nice production facilities. Of course, we have a industrial facilities tax abatement on part of the main building there that was approved by the Board of Trustees going back a number of years. That facility is state of the art, and they're able to simply move in and bring their business activity to that property. The nice thing about that property is it's the overall land area that Jeff Harrison purchased over time there includes a number of either vacant or underutilized areas of land that allow for additional expansion. And I think that was one of the reasons that they were attracted to it, is the opportunity for additional expansion going forward.
So the Bandit property, it's gonna go all the way to Summerton Road?
Yeah,
It's not just the Birch Trucking, but the lots that.
Yes, they purchased
All that was purchased?
Yeah, they
okay.
purchased all the holdings that Jeff Harrison had.
Okay, all of them, good.
On a small scale, the Middle-Michigan Development Corporation, Jim McBride, of course, is one of the representatives, along with me, on the Pleasant Airport Joint Operations and Management Board. He was a significant part of coming up with and helping to facilitate the project for the airport crew car. And it's it's a much smaller scale, but equally important, frankly, because that crew car has proved to be very popular among the pilots, and those folks are coming into our East EDA district, and actually also our West EDA district, for restaurants and other things. So it's getting a lot of business, and the word is getting out now. In fact, right now, the new annual notices on things are going out. So the crew car is being added to kind of regional and beyond regional notices about what the airport services are here, and so it's remarkable how much that has had an impact on pilots coming in here and what they can do. It's made it so much easier for folks to be able to come in, be on layover, and go and do what they need to do. Prior to that, they had to rent a car, or they had to try to get a cab or something.
I remember when you were offering this option to us last year, and it was really exciting to think about what the potential is, so it's great to hear that we were thinking correctly and supporting this idea.
Yep. And we did get some funding from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The airport board did to do the vinyl wrap, as we talked about. That we wanted ultimately. It's a police cruiser. It's actually in very good shape. Nice black and white. It's very, very nice, but nonetheless, it's not the best that it could be in terms of being able to identify the car and be able to have it be something that's noticeable in the areas that's going about the community. And so Convention and Visitors Bureau had some money they called destination marketing grants. And so the airport board applied for that. I helped put that letter together. They received funding that will basically fill the gap that they had to be able to do that vinyl wrap this year. So that process is also getting started.
There's a nice improvement.
Yep.
Great. Any new, and I don't want to get off subject, but would it be okay to ask about the construction timing on Pickard? Or is
That's
that
coming up.
Okay, let's wait on it then.
So any other questions at this point? As I said, we'll reschedule with Jim and have him come to a future meeting.
I had a comment or a question. So the East DDA, we contribute the 2,500, the West DDA, 2,500. So if you look at page 21 in the report, as
They do
Charter
again this
Township
year.
of Union. Now, does the township, do the trustees contribute? So should we also have East DDA and West DDA under that?
Or the EDA?
Or the EDA?
Yeah. I think.
And I don't have a problem with putting Jim on the spot ahead of time for this. I think that's an excellent question to ask him, and I can almost guarantee what his answer is going to be. That, that he's going to say, next year we're going to make sure it's in there. I suspect that we were lumped in. of
Pretty sure we
course.
brought this up last year, though. We looked at the minutes.
But,
Yeah, we need to
See, I'm telling you,
two-
they're-
two times
We did.
next year.
but
These guys are stealing you guys' thunder, man. No, thank you.
Does
Good
the
catch.
Charter Township support the Mid-Michigan as well?
Yes.
I thought so,
I think it's annually, don't hold me to this, but I think it's 10,000, right?
that's what I remember too,
And Sherry's nodding, so.
yeah.
Okay, then getting back to the agenda. Number 9, pending business.
okay, this time.
Didn't you have a question about the road, Marty?
Oh, sure.
That one, like I said, we haven't actually had under director comments.
That's 10.
Yeah.
Second page,
Update on that.
next page.
Okay, gotcha.
And then,
Forgot about the second page. Yeah, go ahead, 10.
All right. So just a few items on the road. I met with MDA, MDOT folks earlier this month, pre-construction meeting. The road project is coming up. The scheduled start date, official start date is March 6th. You can already see folks out there, utility cable companies, various sorts are moving lines or temporarily stringing lines overhead to allow for the road work to be done. But the official date for the project itself is going to be March 6th. On February 27th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., at the MDOT offices on Corporate Drive, they're going to be holding an open house. So anybody can come in and they'll answer questions about the project. I think there'll be a short, maybe informal presentation, but it's an opportunity to see the plans, to ask questions of the various officials and contractors involved. So the
4 to
February 27th,
7? 4 to 7?
4 to 6, yeah.
4 to 6,
February 27th.
on Monday.
Yep, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And it's an open house format, so come anytime during that period. So, just some other updates. As you know, they're going to be taking down our streetlights. The contractor has been working on storage solutions for that. Made it clear that our expectation is they're going to be stored inside. Obviously sort of secured against animals or other things. They've been looking for a place to be able to do that. They are doing some bridge work. They are going to be replacing the bearings tops of the bridge piers. That last time it was 2020. They did some bridge work. They replaced the deck. They also painted the work underneath, but they didn't replace those bearings. So this time they're lifting the bridge, replacing those bearings. So that's going to. Initially, they thought that wouldn't impact our lights under the bridge, but the contractor has made clear that they need the lights removed. So that they are going to remove them. It looks like they're going to only need to remove them 1 or 2 at a time because they're going to be cycling around underneath there from space to space. So we'll be storing those, working with them, and basically hanging on to the light and giving it back to them when they need it. As part of that work, though, to support the bridge, they are going to be burying our sidewalls and our sidewalks in about 4 feet of material. They are going to be putting down protective material in there to both some fabric material, but also some steel plates to help protect those walls and make sure that they don't get damaged. But they need that base in order to mount, basically put their supports on that to hold the bridge up while they're lifting it up to be able to take out those bearings. So it will be affecting lanes. It will also block our sidewalks, but one side or the other, basically. It won't be the whole thing at once. And their plan is that the sidewalks will not be damaged because of the amount of material on top and the spread of how they're of support. But they did indicate that if there is damage, that it will be taken care of. So, and the same thing with the walls. Just as with the last project, if something does get damaged, so that will be repaired. It does mean that much of our irrigation system is out of order for the year, including within the interchange. We are planning to have some plants on the end walls, what I call the wing walls, outside of the bridges. And our contractor will probably be watering those manually, but it seemed like it was worth having at least that part of our flowers in the interchange area. We will have flowers on the light poles, and we should have irrigation on the light poles east of the bridge. And also we'll have maybe some irrigation north on Isabella. We'll see on that one. But most of the system will be down.
Is there any drawings for reinstalling that irrigation system?
The irrigation system, they are going to reinstall the streetlights.
Right.
They'll put the wiring back. They'll put the foundations back. They're going to plumb the streetlights for our irrigation, because we do have irrigation goes up into the lights. They're going to prep that with conduit, but they do not do irrigation. Pushed and pushed and pushed on that, and MDOT simply says that's not ours.
But that'll be our responsibility.
That's our responsibility.
We'll have to draw a schematic for it, or what is our goal to try and get that back together?
Well, essentially, we're going to have to rebuild the system. I think on the north side, it's going to be completely wiped out. There will be nothing left by the time they're done. On the south side, I suspect, although they've indicated an effort to try to avoid getting into the sidewalks, and but every time I turn around, they're creeping more into that space. So I expect most of the south side system will also be wiped out, essentially all of it, because what's there will probably simply run new plumbing rather than try to patch the pieces of the old.
Yeah.
So,
Will they put any tubes underneath the driveways going?
thank you.
Chaseways.
Yes, and that is part of their project. They
Okay.
are, in the same way that they're doing with the
That makes it
light pole
easier.
foundations, they're running the same plumbing, basically a PVC piping underneath all the driveways, so and they're doing that in consistent with our as-built plan for the current system. So we will be able to string that back through without digging up driveways after the fact.
Yes, they're giving us permission to use those conduits then.
They are, yes. So we have permission to put the irrigation back. That's we've had it, and they've confirmed that we can put it back once they're done. I did ask about, can we try to coordinate our timing so that they're not hydroseeding, and then we have to come and tear it up, and essentially what they said was that would not be likely. That first of all, because of the speed of things, but also because of working with the contractor, that likely we would be coming back in after they're done to do our part.
Is there a time that we should start thinking about getting involved in laying out a project that could be put out for people to look at and consider doing it as a contractor for installing the new system? Because the heads are so much more advanced, and even the electronic controls of the system, who knows, may be able to be run from this office to run your irrigation.
Right.
But I just wondered if there would be some timing that we should be looking at for getting people on board that would want to put a bid in on doing the project.
So this project, it was a 2-year reconstruction. The portion in the township is all supposed to be completed in 2023. Starting March 6th, the end date is November 15th.
Wow.
So
And
next year.
what they have indicated is that they're going to probably use all of it. So we're in a situation where we would be likely doing our work the following spring if we're doing it. So we have a significant amount of time. I think we would want to have the MDOT as-built drawings for what they actually installed that we could share with the contractor. But yeah, we're essentially looking at spring of 2024.
So they wouldn't ever include something like that contractor as being part of the project, that they would not allow them to be involved until after the project was complete, before they did their work?
Yeah, essentially, that's what they
No
said.
concert.
Yeah, that the contractor is in charge, and they said that it would not be, it would not be expected that they would allow to have an outside township contractor working in the same environment as their general contractors.
It wouldn't really make any difference. They're just putting tubes across and they'll just put their line in it. The grass area isn't even 10 feet wide. Maybe even a little wider in places.
Right,
So
but
probably-
you know, with grass growing in and the time that it takes, there's a season that and depending on when they get their seed in for all the work, whether they use matting that'll come in the spring, whether it's cold or not, because if you get too late in the fall, you almost dormancy.
Yeah. Well, it's
So then you've got
2024.
then you're
We-
talking about going in and starting to condition some of those areas where you have to tear it up. And possibly, we might be able to go in if that November 15th, you know, and this year could have probably done installation in December. I'm just thinking that if you get it in, it's done, it's part of the project, the next year you're already sprinkling in the spring to help grow in that matting that was put down. So I'm just saying.
I doubt you'd be able to do that until the project closes, because the contractor has, you know,
There's
drop
liability
dead
and
date, yeah, so
our,
then
you have
They might
two
be-
different
if the
contractors
irrigation guy
on top
comes in
of
and breaks
each
a
other.
curb, who's
Right, but the
responsible?
contract is potentially done by November 15th.
No, it won't be closed out. This whole contract won't even be closed out till 2025. But the phase one, which is Union Township,
Which is all I'm concerned about.
correct, but that won't be closed out until 2024. The completion date, but then the completion date is open and viable, fully open to traffic, and then you have other benchmarks to meet until that they get all their punch list stuff done and everything else. That's not going to be done until 2024.
So you say realistically, that's not the date that it completes, it's more into,
You'll be driving up and
percentage
down. You'll
beyond
have
that.
lines on
Right.
it. You'll have seed down.
but as
you'll
far
have
as the
everything.
contractor saying I'm done here, it's longer than that as a,
Well, the
as a
contractors
rule.
say they're done, but the state's not going to say that they're done.
Just as we did with our sidewalk project, where we had
Yeah,
inspections
yeah.
and final punch list
Right.
items, and
Right.
they came back and fixed a few things. It's similar here, that will simply take some
They'll
time.
probably throw seed down and it'll start growing, and then they can go in and do the sprinkler system.
Yeah, I mean,
then, too.
Right, right.
And
I
so,
mean,
you know,
I agree with both you guys. It's, I see their point where they're not gonna we're like a private contractor trying to work within
Yeah.
the boundaries
They don't
of
wanna
their
see it.
contract limits.
Right.
So they're not gonna let that happen because of the, however, I'm with Marty, we should have a plan ready to go as quick as we possibly can.
So one question I have for you, and this is also something we can put on a future agenda. We have two ways we can really go in terms of this plan. Obviously, we need to work with a contractor. We have a contractor, Teal and Turf, that has done good service for us and knows the system. And they know where things are. We could simply continue to work with them and ask them to put a plan together and bring it to us. We could take this out for bid and go through that process and open it up and invite either a bidding process or a request for qualifications where we can get a number of companies that could essentially present their qualifications to you to do the work. This isn't really a question that we would need to have an answer to towards the beginning of this. So it might be something that's said to put on upcoming agenda, just have discussion about how you as a board would prefer to proceed in terms of working with a contractor to develop a plan. But like I said, I don't have any preference either way. We've certainly been very happy with Teal and Turf. They do good work. They're very responsive.
That's what. Because yes, Teelan's very, very respected and would do probably the best job. But the project started as low bid and it wasn't installed by Teelan. Correct? Am I correct?
Correct.
And it's probably cost us
Tom would know better.
double of the low bid to get it working properly.
That's correct, yes.
yeah.
So.
Well, what about the plantings? I mean, the irrigation guy's not even gonna plant grass seed. I mean, there still has to be a planting program that goes with. And are we gonna replace trees in
Right.
different optimal locations? Are we?
The ornamentals
doing
that are gonna get
ornamentals around
involved.
the seating, or that, whatever's still gonna remain?
So, MDOT is supposed to put back what they removed in terms of the benches and the planter areas and such that we have along the corridor. There are some trees that are being removed where they're in the way of there's an area where they're putting a right-hand turn lane at Isabella Road. That there's also a few trees that are remarkably few actually, for safety or view reasons for being removed. But as I said, that's actually a very small number. We may lose some due to the construction, especially on the north side of the road, because they are, to put this temporary lane on the north side, they're taking everything out, including the sidewalk. And so that's basically taking it right to the root zone of the trees on the other side of the sidewalk. So we may lose some of that north side that need to be replaced. But largely, that's something we'll have to take a look at as the project wraps up and see how those trees recover from that. They are going to be doing some tree trimming also on the north side because of that lane. And in fact, I'm trying to schedule a meeting with the contractor to learn exactly what they're thinking. But even there, they're not talking about cutting back to the trunk. They're talking about trimming branches back to give a little better clearance, height clearance. So my thought is that, like I said, I think we should probably have a policy discussion about how do we want to approach this in terms of a contractor. Either we do, like I said, a request for bids, we put a project to scope together. We can do a request for qualifications where we simply invite companies to come present to you what they can do. Or we can work with our current contractor. So I think that's a good conversation for a future meeting. And then from there, I think that would then give us direction as to how we proceed in terms of putting a plan together. But we do have plenty of time, because this really is something that we're not going to get access to that space until 2024. To move forward from there. And MDOT has said we can put the system back, but we're not going to be able to until then.
I mean, my gut's kind of, there's enough moving pieces to this that it almost merits a civil engineer like a Rowe or somebody, or Gordy Frazier, put together, assist Rodney with an RFP to go out to irrigation firms and landscaping planning firms to reassemble this. I mean,
Yeah, because how it goes back together will be ongoing for decades.
because
There'll be a set of marker at going forward. You don't do as much undoing as possible and have that be a good finished product without having to revisit it.
I mean, typically, like on some my big development projects, the landscaping and the irrigation, I mean, in the base bid, they just get like boundaries to work in and bid to in the planning schedule. But then the irrigation, I mean, you know, it's another animal, because you have a bunch of zones and controls that have to be set only so far apart, and depending on how much rates you're gonna water it. Then I know, like Jeff mentioned, even having it more tricked out with some automation to it. There's just I think we're, might be underestimating the workload if we just say it's an irrigation company.
Well, for the irrigation, I still would trust Thielen fully on
Oh, yeah.
on designing and
Yep.
implementing the right system with the right zones. Randy Shar there's not too many better than him in the state. There are irrigation designers in the state, but we're not talking about
There's nobody else
irrigating
local
a
who
golf
can do this.
green. You know, we're talking about irrigating a road right away that's 35, 45 miles an hour. But I've still got a hard time even approving putting irrigation back. But I would really have a hard time if we started talking to Gordy Frazier or whoever's going to put the extra $40,000 on top of that's going to be an expensive project. So.
Well, you have the choice of either having plants that will survive or not. Because without irrigation, you won't have
Or
plants.
we could give grants to the local businesses and have them extend their irrigation. I mean, there's other ways to look at it, but, and there's definitely ways to have grass survive without water, for the 1 month a year that we don't have water, but,
Well, I think, Jeff, and my understanding of not only the east, but the west EDA is trying to follow that same concept of a, kind of a gateway, kind of an entry
No,
point
no, I-
to the
I
community, which
understand
is
that.
M20 on both sides of it. And, you know, with that in mind, I think you want to try and put your best foot forward. You wouldn't want to build a nice hotel and then not think about putting plants and irrigation to enter into that nice hotel.
well,
That's my
just,
point.
I don't disagree, but you look at, the front of the hospital, their lawn, since we've gotten the irrigation fixed, it's been much better. But their lawn before irrigation was installed was better than it was after irrigation was installed when the DDA took it over. And then the other fact of the matter is, and I won't approve anything, or I won't vote for anything that doesn't have rain gauge on it. The second that thing's turned on in the spring till the second it's turned off in the fall, it runs every day. That is a complete waste of money and resources,
Right.
especially when we do have a drought year, when the township comes out and says, you know, water your lawn on odd number days, but you go down that corridor every single day, 7 days a week, whether it's raining, 5 inches of rain or not.
Which is
I mean,
alluding to the
so,
point Tom
but
was making
maybe we're
about
not good at it.
equipment that is most suited to handle
Correct.
the situation.
But also there's an argument to be made that maybe we as a government entity aren't good at managing this, and we could maybe take, you know, we could be talking $200,000 for the reinstall, giving that money and giving businesses the ability to just extend their irrigation, their existing irrigation, to the roadside.
I suppose that's a discussion, but I think more than, you know, leaning in that direction, I think we're trying to lean in the idea of how do we handle this, and Tom's making the point of having a good plan.
No,
is
no,
one
I-
way to handle it, because you brought up the idea, what about this water that's running that shouldn't? It doesn't need to. And the heads are so much more advanced now, they can do so many more things. And to control them and the water flow, how much water is being used, Brian?
Well, and that's what I've
brought up
said.
the idea of how expensive it is.
Thielen or any reputable irrigation company has a certified guy that just does that for a living. If they're not capable of designing that without a Gordy Fraser or a Rowe, I'm not talking about the landscaping or anything else. I'm just talking strictly the irrigation and try to reduce costs of, we put an irrigation system in the right of way, so now we've got to replace it after we've spent a lot of money getting it to work in many years. So I just want to try to reduce the cost as much as
I think
possible.
that was one of the reasons it took so much money, because it had been under maintained and improperly maintained, so there was, when it went back to being fixed right, there was a lot to be done. And that, it
Oh, no,
gets
and that's what my
expensive.
original comment was, that low bid got us there, and the low, when he mentioned low bid, we had low bid, and an unqualified contractor won the bid, and it's cost us double low bid to get it to a point where it works properly.
Yeah. And time and energy, anything that gets broken over time, it's just, especially in that area, it's so hard to maintain it, and not only that, it's hard to grow plants in there. That you get so beat up with the salt and the chemicals and the exhaust moving back and forth and all the impacts and the heat that it takes there. It's not an easy place to grow plants. And I think with the irrigation, the way it's been working, when I drive through there, I notice the difference between where the township area is and where the city is. And the plants are way healthier in the township section of that corridor.
Gets water every day.
Part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it. I don't know if the
I've
city.
No,
driven
it's
down
all
there.
of it.
It's
I mean,
always
you,
going off when
yeah,
it's raining.
yeah.
Yeah, it's part of it, a big part of it. Without the water, you aren't gonna have plants, that's right.
I mean, I'm a firm believer, if we indeed want to make the corridor look nice, east, especially the east, you gotta have irrigation. I mean, it'll be burnt up, looking like crap. And then if we add our planting flowers, specialty species,
Right.
that the plantings are a direct function of the design of the irrigation system.
Right.
So it's like, and then, but that's intriguing. There has to be a reason we did this in the first place. Why wouldn't the landowners, the business owners, provide the irrigation and the plantings?
First of all, I would suggest that we include a discussion item on the next agenda. We'll just
Yes,
make
definitely.
discussion
Yeah.
of irrigation, and that way we can have conversations about all these topics. I'll say, just in passing, a couple of thoughts. One is, the area around the interchange is, I think, was probably a very important area for the initial project, because that's an area, first of all, it does not get enough water. If we, for example, we have planting beds under the bridges, where in the past, there were plants in there that were hardy for that space. Largely, the various construction the 2020 construction project took out what was left of that, and also damaged much of that irrigation in that space. And because we knew this was coming again soon, we didn't fix that. We just fixed the areas that we were actually had flowers in. But that's an area that really does need to have plant material, and it would absolutely have to have irrigation to function. But beyond that, I will say that also that actually the number of businesses that have their own private irrigation is only a small percentage of that quarter.
Yeah.
There are large areas that are either vacant lots
Right.
or they're
They don't have
businesses that do not have that
Yeah.
system. And so it would be spotty, and each one would have to get approval from MDOT. It's not approval from us, it's approval from MDOT. Each one would have to go through that process, anew essentially, to get the permission to be there. And MDOT may do it, but it would be certainly very cumbersome for all those businesses.
Then we can bring it up for discussion, but so phase 1 and 2 is happening in 23, 24, but isn't phase 4 or 3 happening with the roundabouts in 25 or 26? So we've got to think about that as well, because yes, those corridors for coming in town, very important, especially, around the exit. But if we're gonna have 2 roundabouts on each side of it, we don't want to have this conversation
Rebuild it
in 3 years or 2 years and rebuild the irrigation system again. So
Right.
those are because that's my understanding, that the roundabouts got chopped off this first round, but they're out there still.
That is true. They are planning to come back. At this point, it's 2026. It's tentative, but that's their
Right.
plan. So, but those are all, like I said, I think we'll include that as a discussion item. We can talk it over a few meetings to kind of work out your policy preferences and move forward.
Definitely,
The next item that we had on director comments was a grant program update, just a quick update. We did reach out with a specific invitation to, what was it, eight businesses between the east and west DDA districts that seem to have opportunities, either signs or other elements that where they might benefit from the grant programs. We sent out a letter to each of them, shared the grant information with them. We haven't had any applications yet for that, but we are continuing to make an effort to move that forward. We had an interesting, MTA has a kind of I call it a listserv because I date back that far, but essentially a group email that goes out where folks can ask questions, get answers. And one of those topics is related to DDA districts. A question came up on that about DDAs providing grants to private property owners. And the questioner was essentially saying, you can't do that. And they cited something in the state act for DDAs. We had our attorney look at that, just want to make sure we're on the right page. And our attorney did confirm that they were incorrect, that we are operating correctly in what we're doing, which I wasn't surprised about, but I want to make sure after seeing that. So anyway, we're continuing to move that grant program, and we'll continue to invite people and see where we go with that. The last item was 2120 Yates Drive, and as you saw, we paid the bill for the first part of that. The building is down, it's gone, the junk is all gone. There is essentially a final site restoration that will take place in the spring, just as soon as things start being able to grow, they'll come back and finish the grading up and and seed it. And that project will be completed, and then we'll be working on getting that property up for sale. So, and that's actually something that I'd like to talk about, is what your preference would be in that regard as well. So we'll include that also on a future agenda. I mean, here again, we can do a request for bids. We can simply put it in the hands of a real estate agent. There's various ways we can approach that. So we'll bring that to probably to your next meeting to just have the conversation about it. That's all I have at the moment.
Anybody else? Hearing no more questions, I guess we can call the meeting adjourned, 5:31. And we'll see everybody
Seems like a lot
March 21st. Thanks.
Seems like a lot got done in an hour.